What's up, everybody? So I'm gonna be real with you. I've been working like 12-hour days recently, and usually I have like a whole outline plan for at least the opening rant and the whole course of the stream, right? I do not have that today because I've been working 12-hour days. It was also recently my wedding anniversary. So I've been busy with family when not working. My wife and I have been married for 11 years now. So that's kind of cool, right? Nothing really to complain about there. There is one thing I do want to complain about. So don't worry. Our old friend, Hasan Piker, famous for lying about the Communist Party to an audience of, tens of thousands of people, recently had a glowing article written about him in the New York Times called "A Progressive Mind in a MAGA Body." Wow. Right? I don't even know where to begin with this. Let's first just look at who this guy is, right? Millionaire, lives in a giant mansion in LA, right? Not working class, doesn't claim to be working class, but claims to be on the side of the working class, which I find strange because most people on the side of the working class aren't getting glowing reviews of them as a person in the New York Times, the mouthpiece of our class enemy. I don't know. They also don't, hang out with bloodthirsty Zionists that are responsible for mass murder like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders, and basically try to funnel people into support for them and the Democratic Party, who also have the blood of innocent Palestinian children on their hands. Most progressives that I know don't do that kind of thing. Most people on the side of the working class don't do that kind of thing, right? So why does this guy act as if he's on our side while lying to his audience about the Communist Party, the only attempt going on right now to create an independent political power for the working class? Why does he get to talk as if he's on our side? I don't understand that. I genuinely don't. Everything he does is for his class interests, right? And I mean, let's be, it's not like he doesn't know who we are. It's not like we haven't reached out to him to try to say, hey, maybe if you're confused or misinformed, we should have a conversation, right? He's ignored us at every single turn while not getting our name out of his mouth. So we're on his mind, yet he can't actually have a conversation. And I want to know why. Right? Why is it? Why do you think this millionaire who pretends to be a Marxist, and we can get into that if you guys want, why does he lie about the Communist Party and then avoid us? Now, if you take the other context I mentioned into account, the trying to push people towards bloodthirsty Zionists and bourgeois politicians, and you add that to the lies about the Communist Party, and you add that to the fact that the guy's he's petty bourgeois, right? He's declared for the ideology of the ruling class many times. He's come out against the Communist China because he is such an individualist that he doesn't like that they have, restrictions on pornography there. So I want to know why that is, right? Why does he do all this, constantly talk about us, yet can't talk to us? I find that interesting. In my experience, the only people who avoid an actual conversation are people with something to hide. Now, I don't know what he has to hide. Maybe he's a perfectly reasonable guy. But I find that most reasonable guys I know don't collaborate with the New York Times and CNN. They recognize these institutions as institutions owned and used against the working class by our enemy. There is us and there is them. There's the worker and the enemy of the worker. I don't know for a fact which side this guy's on. And, I'd like to believe maybe we can pull him onto the side of the worker. But it can't happen while, he refuses to have conversations while continually talking about us. I'm going to say this one more time. There is us and there is them. There is the worker and the enemy of the worker. Anyone trying to tell you they're in between is full of shit. They're on the side of our enemy, and therefore,
Sheriff Hazard is a hard man to be. High sheriff is his only plan. He digs through pockets, takes what he can, for he's High Sheriff Hazard. He caught me one evening, and here's what he said: "You look like a Russian, you look like a red, and if you're fond of your skin and your head, beware the High Sheriff of Hazard."
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Noah's show. This is usually where I try to trick you and say that I'm Sebastian and he's Noah, or he's Noah. But I'm not going to do that. You guys are way too smart for that. What's up, Sebastian? How you doing, brother? I feel like we haven't talked to him forever.
Yeah. We didn't have a show last week. You were getting to a paper that'll be really good, so everyone should read that once it's out. But also, we're thinking of perhaps moving the day of the show. Our thinking is just that Monday with the slog and the start of the new week, it might not be the best day. We're thinking of moving it to either Thursday or Friday. We haven't decided yet. Either, we'll figure it out behind the scenes or maybe even put a poll out. So just keep a heads up for that.
Yeah, what do you guys think? You guys tell us if you like Thursday or Friday. One's if you like Thursday, two's if you like Friday in the chat. We're also going to be unveiling our new, look of the show, right?
Mm-hmm. We're working with some new frames, some backgrounds. Hopefully we'll spruce some stuff up for you by the next time you'll see us.
Yeah, we won't look so, well, I mean, there's nothing you can do for how ugly I am, but, it is what it is. But at least the stuff around me will be cooler. So that's good. Everybody looks like they like Thursday, huh?
Yeah, that's what I was figuring, because Friday people might already be with their families and stuff heading into the weekend.
Makes sense. And Friday for me is an awkward day. Like half of my Fridays are like really time crunched.
Also,
anyway,
as for this, we were thinking of maybe even transitioning it into Haz's show. Like we'll start it at 6, and I think his space starts at 8 or 9.
Yeah, I
So
think he
as ours
begins
is
at 9.
wrapping up, we'll be like, "Yo, Haz's space is starting soon, so head over there."
It'll be like a full day of Communist Party people that you guys
Yeah.
can listen to, I guess. Unfortunately, I'm not the best warm up. So anyway, we got speaking of Haz, we have a pretty fun show planned for you guys tonight. If you weren't aware, last night Haz debated possibly one of the silliest people I've ever heard in my life.
And we had him on a couple weeks ago as well.
Right. This guy, okay, so a couple weeks ago, this guy who calls himself Truth Teller, which is hilarious for him to call himself, but he calls himself Truth Teller. He joined our space, right? And immediately started like spurging out, trying to like spit a whole list of lies at me. And I'm like, yo, whoa, buddy, slow down. Like, I know you're excited. It's fine. We can get to all the things you want to say, but you can't just move past all of these things that don't make sense to me. You need to explain them first.
Yeah, it's important to concretize stuff, and if you let him just go past lies, then you can't get to the correct point
Right.
that you're trying to make. And also, the funny thing was, I was trying to mute the guy because he was speaking over you, and I didn't realize they can just unmute themselves. So he was just
like no sense of like conversation or trying to get points out. Just, I need to say this right now. And I was like, dude, I just can't with this and you now. I'm sorry. But like, okay, so he does that, right? And I guess I made him angry. Whatever. So Haz debated him last night. Like some big X guy set up a debate between Haz and him. Sebastian is putting a link to the vote on who won. If you've heard it, it's very obvious that Haz won. If you haven't voted yet, go vote right now.
It's right there. I'm going to post the link again if you guys missed it.
Initially, it was a really, really close margin. And that's undoubtedly because the neo-Nazis were organizing to try to flood the vote, right? So we're going to organically overcome that with you guys who know for a fact that Haz won going and voting if you haven't right now. Go vote, go vote, go vote. Very, very important. So yeah, I listened to this. I had another 12-hour workday today, believe it or not. I didn't, dude, I've been out of my house. I just got home like a half hour ago.
Jeez.
I've been out of my house all day, like since before the sun came up.
Yeah, you were up on a roof or something earlier, right?
Most of the day I was on a roof, yeah. Working on some dormers. But dormers are like a peak on a second floor. Anyway, so I listened to this while I was at work, right? I kind of had to. I wanted to make sure I knew what we were getting into tonight and there wasn't going to be anything crazy said. And every single thing this kid says is either a lie, an exaggeration, or a misrepresentation. And he does to Haz during the debate what he was trying to do to me. And the official term for it is a gish gallop. Mm-hmm. It's where you list off a whole bunch of lies in quick succession on different topics, because subconsciously your audience is going to be taking those in and your opponent can only deal with one of them. Mm-hmm. Because you have to take each one of those. And as I heard him when he joined our space starting to try to do this, I stopped him. It's the only thing you can do, right? Like, look, dude, get to that once you prove one thing. We can't let them all go by. Unfortunately, in the debate format Haz was in last night, they were like uninterrupted, like timed segments. So this kid was allowed to do that, right? And what's funny is during the debate, he was like trying to claim that Haz was resorting to sleazy debate tactics when that was the only thing he was doing. It's
And
like,
name calling when he was calling him stuff as well.
like it's wild. And then like everything. Oh, dude, we'll get into it. We'll get into it. I promise. Before we do, though, Popers
20 months.
has been a member for 20 months. Popers is OG Midwestern Marx Institute, by the way. We love Popers. The good trot here says Gramsci predicted Hasan during the opener. He did. It's crazy how prophetic a lot of Marxists were, you know?
Also, going back to the Gish galloping thing, it kind of reminds.
Real quick, before
yeah,
we do,
sorry.
Popers also thank you for the $2, brother, and thank you, good trot, for the 5.
Thanks
I
for all
do
the
wear
donations.
sunscreen. I have those like things that look like deodorant sticks. They work
Oh, yeah.
amazingly. Anyway,
Gotta get
go
one of
ahead,
those to reapply.
Sebastian. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to make a connection almost to the whole like Trump derangement syndrome of like the 2016 era, where all he would do was spit out 10 lies, and then Democrats pat themselves on the back, going through and debunking all of them as if it's productive in any capacity. Like, all it does is obfuscate a point and just drags you down to their level. Like, if we sit there seriously debating whether or not Lenin was Jewish, as if it even matters, then we're just down at his level.
Dude, it's crazy because, like, here's the thing. Anyone can look for something that tends to confirm their preconceptions.
Mhm.
It takes an actual truth teller to look at your preconception and see if it measures up to your own scrutiny.
Yeah.
And this is what these cowards are always afraid to do, because they've taken this in and made it a focal point of their entire life, right? Like, their whole life is focused around calling everything Jewish. Like, they were calling the Chinese Jewish and Haz Jewish. Everything's Jewish. It's the most ridiculous thing when you get through all the mental gymnastics. So when you come across information that goes, oh wait, the problem's actually not Jewish people at all, that busts a hole in what you were so sure reality was. It's the same way us correcting the fake left on their Marxism is for them, right? Something they made a part of themselves, part of their identity, is gone. And they turn away from that sort of reflexively. They can't allow themselves to even entertain the notion. So he has to convince himself at some level that everyone saying something opposed to this is a lying Jew, right? It's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. And it's so sad to watch people go through it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I mean, funnily enough, with all this JQ stuff, the guy kind of gives off like Ben Shapiro vibes in the manner in which he debates. And it's like, that's almost my hope, that a lot of his audience are these, debate bro, like impressionable teenagers. And if they actually listen to the debate rather than just, going off of the fact that they're his follower, maybe they'll come to our side. Maybe they'll, come to their senses.
Well, I mean, Haz very, very clearly won, as the guy couldn't back up a single claim. There's a point, and we'll get to this. I know, by the way, everybody, Sebastian has a hard out at 8:30, but if we're not through it, I'll stick around and we'll keep going. But there's a point in the debate where Haz is just trying to get him to focus on one thing. And because his only tactic is this Gish Gallop, he can't do that. It's physically impossible for him to do that. And he throws a fit. He like goes bonkers trying to and gets angry. You guys will hear it. VLX, thank you. I don't know what that means, but it's funny. Thank you for the $2, brother. All right, so what do you think? Should we get into this or what?
Yeah, sure, I'm game.
All right, let's do it.
I just had to close the door. There was an ambulance in the background.
Okay, that's good. Ambulances can be loud. My mother-in-law is actually leaving downstairs. I hear her right now. All right, we're going to play the recording. You guys ready? I'm ready. Oh, wait, there's like a bunch of like nonsense. It is some fun, easy listening, I guess.
Yeah, it's like some elevator music.
That we had, it wasn't working. I was trying for a good 3-4 minutes to start the space and it wouldn't start. So we had to start another one. We had at least about 1,200, 1,300 people who'd set a reminder on that, unfortunately. So do me a favor, retweet, share the space, let everybody know we're live. That would be brilliant. I am sending the link out to a few people as well because
Before we get started, everyone go vote. Look at that. Like, we need to get back in this against all of their like fake votes they put in. We need to organically overcome that with real votes. So get to it, guys.
people were prepped up and hyped up for this debate. On the Bolsheviks and Holodomor, it's going to be Haz Al-din from the ACP and Truth Teller debating. I want to welcome Myron in as host. Myron, how you doing?
Hey, what's up, man? Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. No, I'm also broadcasting this thing right now on YouTube and on Rumble, so we got even more eyeballs that way. So this is going to be a big one. Got a lot of people that obviously were waiting for this. I'm tweeting out the space as well. So yeah, welcome to True Teller and welcome to Haz, man.
By the way, the Good Trot actually made it, informed us, and thank you for that. We're in the lead right now, by the way, at 52% to 47.
Yep,
So
make
just
sure you
so you
keep
guys are
voting.
aware. Keep it up.
Yeah, I just want to welcome Truth and Haz as well onto the space. Haz, thanks for joining us. Haz Al-din from the ACP party. And Truth Teller here to debate. Haz
Sorry, I noticed this morning. Saying ACP party is like saying ATM machine.
Yeah.
is your mic working? Are you ready to debate?
Yep. Thank you so much for having me on. I've been excited to have this debate for a long time. And, thank you both for hosting it. Should be good.
I appreciate that, Haz. And Truth, are you doing well? Are you ready for the debate? And is your mic loud and clear?
Let's do a mic check. How is it?
It's teeny bit low unless it's me. Is there any way you can just increase it slightly, or is it me?
Okay. I'm speaking right into the mic right now. How is it now?
Okay, it must be me. It must be me. Myron, can you hear him clearly?
Myron, can you hear me okay?
Oh my God, guys, come on. You're killing me with this.
Yeah, no, I realized what it was. I think this is and it's an important point to learn.
Does anyone in the chat have a timestamp for the
We've got
actual
5 or
start, by any
not.
chance?
I'm just fast forwarding it. It'll be easier if I do this and try to like zoom through. Like
Yeah.
Twitter's or X's like space setup. Like if you look at this, like it's crappy to pick timestamps out. So I'm just gonna keep going.
This debate to put together in the history of, so big credit to is in the Jewish construct, and so therefore there may be certain as there is question to the other side and have a back and forth dialogue on that. Hopefully that works out. And then the last side, and this is where the audience comes in, put your questions in the tweet, in the nest. Because if there is questions, for example, you've got where you on both
Someone in the
sides
chat
to
said
speak
we
about,
could
because
use,
obviously
Haz's
Haz
stream
Al-din
instead.
comes from the communist
And
perspective.
then it starts at around 25 to 30 minutes there. I can find the
25 to
link.
30 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh geez, there's a lot of opener.
Well, that's just on Haz's stream. I don't know if it's the same with the space or if
Oh,
he started slightly earlier.
I don't
but
think it is. Okay.
But yeah, the first topic
just
is going to
general
be general preamble, and then the first
Slaves, being the Gentiles, would be the ones.
Okay, here we
with the
go.
timer. With the timer.
Oh, yeah, I got it for sure. Yeah,
That
for sure.
way you know to wrap up. You got 10 seconds to go. And if one of you do go,
Yeah, I just want to make sure you guys can hear me okay?
Here we go. This is
I can hear you perfectly, man.
Yeah.
Excellent. I'm ready.
Cool.
Tell
All
me
right,
if you
man.
want me to pause, Sebastian.
I will start talking now, and I'll start the timer.
Sure, yeah, thank you. First of all, thanks to the co-host for moderating the debate.
That's a great idea. I have a better link from Haz's kick. We're gonna go to that. You said it's at 20 minutes?
The person in the chat said 25 to 30 minutes, somewhere in that range.
30? Okay. Okay, I think I got it. Give me a sec, guys. All right, here we go. This is a lot better of a screen. I hate like non-dark modes anyway, right? So we'll use this. I think I have it just where we were.
Cool.
Let me know if like how long the opening babble is, if you guys know. If not, whatever. We'll just kind of fast forward our way through.
And their position on the Bolsheviks and the Holodomor. And then we're going to have a scenario where we've got 5 main topics, and we'll go back and forth on those.
10 seconds.
Oh yeah, I
I'll
got
say
it.
10.
Sure.
That way, you know, to wrap up, you got 10 seconds to go.
This is right where
And
we
if
were.
one of you goes over, what I'll do is I'll make sure I add that time to the next person. Let's say Truth goes over by 10 seconds. I will give you an extra 10 seconds, Haz. Cool?
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
All right. Awesome. If there's anything else, Truth, are you good?
Yeah, I just want to make sure you guys can hear me okay?
I can hear you perfectly, man.
Excellent. I'm ready.
Cool. All right, man. I will start talking now and I'll start the timer.
Sure, yeah, thank you. First of all, thanks to the co-host for moderating the debate. Thank you to Haz for showing up as well, and for everyone that's here listening. Appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time on Sunday night. All right, so I'm of the contention that the Judeo-Bolsheviks were primarily of Jewish descent, heritage, and many of them maybe even tried to hide their heritage, but in fact, communism in and of itself is a Jewish construct. But nobody has to take my word for it. I like to use, well, Jewish sources who claim the same thing. So I'll start with Rabbi Harry Watton, who says the communist soul is the soul of Judaism. Hence, it follows that as in the Russian Revolution, the triumph of communism was the triumph.
Can you pause right here for 1 second?
Jewish elements provide the driving forces.
Didn't the Pope literally recently say that in a sociological sense, if the Bible and Jesus were taken to their logical conclusion, then he's a communist? I mean, the same thing can be said about any religion, really. You can impart, communist ethic into anything.
Well, yeah, exactly. And here's the thing, like what he's doing already is picking people who've said something he already thinks in order to confirm that. I could give you somebody random saying anything. That doesn't make it correct. We actually have to dig into what it is, right? And whether it's correct or not. And that's this guy's problem every effing time, right? Mac with the 10. Thanks, brother. It's a spoiler, Haz won. Yeah.
Yeah, I have no idea who that rabbi is anyway, but I mean.
Right, and he's the same guy, by the way, that also said that Nazism is also Judaism. So, like, it's silly, like, anyway.
For communism, that was Dr. Oscar Levy, and then some may call it communism, but I call it what it is, Judaism. That's Rabbi Stephen S. Weiss. For those who have a little bit of understanding of the Talmud, it's quite clear that communism is essentially a manifestation of what Judaism wants, which is to create the slave state where the Jews would be on top.
It's better
in
with
charge of all
laughing
the
at it.
means of production.
Wait,
and then
the idea of
being
communism is to create a
the
slave
ones
state?
working within the
Say what?
The idea of communism is to create a slave state?
Apparently, yeah. I don't know what theoretical text he got that from, but
Yeah, instead of eliminating class distinction, we're heightening them.
right. We're just like, you know what? All these things, this stuff about the proletariat, the dialectical development of society, contradiction within society, like screw all that. We just want some slaves, dog. Like how stupid. And this is the thing, like these people with everything they say reveal how stupid they are, right? A very cursory, if this guy actually cared about communism, he would learn it. He would learn about it, right? But he hasn't read a word of Marxism. He hasn't studied the history, nothing. I don't know. Let's keep going.
In the gulags and also within factories under slave labor type conditions. This has always been the contention of what communism was. So then we ask, well, who founded this? Who founded communism? Who drafted the main manifestos? We have to cite then first Moses Hess, he wrote the book actually, and before that he was expressing his ideas, and he met with both Frederick Engels, Karl Marx, his real name, Moses Mordecai Levy, after he changed.
Okay. Hold on a second. Moses Hess was someone that Marx and Engels kind of ripped on in private. Just so you guys know, like this guy is claiming that he invented communism and wrote the foundational text. The foundational texts of communism, there's 3 of them, in my opinion. The Communist Manifesto, Capital, Anti-Düring. Those 3 books, right, are the theoretical foundations, really, of the dialectical materialist worldview and the beginning of the communist movement. The Communist Manifesto itself was a party program, right? It was written in order to like hype people up. And it had nothing to do with Moses Hess. Very, 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 very minor figure. I think the guy was just looking for Jewish people to associate with it. Like, that's how dumb it gets, guys.
ChatGPT, give me a list of Jewish people that Karl Marx knew.
Exactly.
Changed it. So he met with them and discussed ideas for both Zionism and communism. Communism, its definition is quite clear. It's the violent overthrow of the establishment so that those who they claim are proletariats, the factory workers, will then take control and be in charge of the means of production. So Moses Hess, well, of course, wrote his book, and he also collaborated with both Karl Marx and Frederick Engels, where he then drafted the Communist Manifesto and later the Das Kapital, which would serve as the main pretext to then go about the invasions later on that would take place, because it's an ideology, a socio-political economic ideology. It isn't based on anything.
So this is what I was talking about his like weird, just like screeds. If this were a conversation, this is where we would be like, okay. Hold on. You say that communism is an ideology founded upon a violent overthrow of the establishment, and Capital backs it up. Give me any passage from Capital that tells you that. You can't do it because the guy has no. Okay, we're going to be here all night if we keep this up.
Anything peaceful or democratic or through election. Again, it's done through violent overthrow. As we've seen throughout history with respect to how Jews operate, they've never been ones to operate by the letter of the law. They like creating their own legal systems.
Wait.
Already.
What?
Already.
He said,
yeah.
He said communism requires violent revolution and Jews are untrustworthy and don't follow the law. So communism is Jewish. That was his argument.
Cough, INA, cough.
Their own ideologies, their own manifestos to then go about achieving it. Fast forwarding a bit to 1897, we had the establishment of the Jewish Bund League, and at the same time also the Zionist Manifesto was released. How convenient. And then they slowly went about trying to push their way through. And even prior to that, they were pushing their way through. They actually assassinated Alexander II, who was the Tsar of Russia, in the early 1860s, even before that, actually. He liberated all the serfs in 1861. Now let's talk about pre-Tsar, or actually during the Tsar's reign, and what the conditions were like for Russia. Well, in fact, they had some of the best working conditions that were established before World War I.
Okay, I want you guys to just think about what he just said. In Tsarist Russia, they had some of the, quote, best working conditions before World War I. This is a country with over 90% illiteracy. Largely agrarian and unindustrialized. They were literally reaping fields with hand sickles. That's what the sickle in the hammer and sickle is for, right? Because that's what they actually were using. So I want you guys to just keep that in mind as he goes, that this is the picture he's trying to paint of a what's basically what we call a third world country.
But also, what the hell was the 1905 revolution then, if everything was all peachy and fine?
Right, like how did that develop? Well, he can't explain that. He confuses it multiple times with the October Revolution in
Oh, really?
1917.
Right.
Because remember, for him, it's all about evil Jewish people getting together to do evil Jewish things.
Workers, first of all, the so-called workers, peasants, serfs, whatever you want to call them, they were more like first-class citizens. They had private property rights. They had their own property. In fact, they could bear arms. They all had secure, guaranteed jobs. The Russian economy was a top 4 economy with only a 2% tax rate, a minimal debt, because they had their own state-run treasury where they were issuing their own notes. And so they
minimal debt. The first thing the Bolsheviks do is cancel all of the ridiculous debt the Tsars had taken on.
They weren't having to worry about the usurious banksters through the Rothschilds who were taking over slowly all of the major countries around the world. They first started when they took over the bank in Amsterdam in 1609. Then they moved up to the UK in 1694, and they would get up to the US
Wasn't
in
their shit all
1913,
owned
and
by
many
France?
other banks in between. Their objective.
Oh,
for
shit.
Bell.
It was like late
Dude.
40s.
Dude, I just accidentally clicked the time thing.
Yeah, it was like the late 40s. I think.
The late
Before-
40s? Okay.
I think so. Yeah, before Haz started speaking.
Okay, what were you saying?
I actually, yeah, that made me blank, but I'll come back to it if I remember.
That's fine. That's fine.
Discussed how things failed essentially under communism and
Oh yeah,
essentially collapsed by
didn't France
1991.
own basically all the industry and stuff and have Russia's debt?
Yes. Like the Tsars were completely in debt to France.
Yeah.
And also indebting themselves more in order to fight a war they could not win. Right? Like Tsar Nicholas II is known, even in bourgeois history, as one of the dumbest leaders in history. Like he made wild, rash decisions because he thought that he was appointed by God to lead Russia. And this guy wants to talk about like Christianity and this and that. Why does he support utter blasphemy like this? And people literally telling an entire country that God has appointed them to send their sons to die in a war they cannot win.
Exactly.
Into more details during the rounds. Thank you for coming out.
Appreciate that. So Haz, you'll have 5 minutes and 15
What's up, Mig? I saw you there.
seconds. Once Myron is ready, we'll start the timer. Myron, you ready? If not, I can start the timer. Okay, I'll do it. 1 second. Let me just get the clock up so that you get the exact time, so it's fair. Right. Okay. Haz, go ahead. Thank you so much.
So I'm Haz Al-din, the executive chairman of the American Communist Party, and as the executive chairman of an actual communist party, I am amazed at this colorful description our resident communist and Marxist scholar, truth teller, has given about communism. Now, as somebody who studied Marxism since I was 12 or 13 years old, I'm amazed at this new scholarly interpretation where it's all about enslaving the Goyim and having Jewish people on top. It's the first time I'm hearing about this. And I'm sure that as the debate progresses, we're going to find that Truth Teller is extremely well read and extremely literate regarding the classics of the canon of Marxist and Marxist-Leninist literature. I'm sure he's read many Marxist books. I'm sure he's read the writings of Karl Marx and Lenin and Mao and Stalin and others. And I can't wait to have a scholarly exchange with him about his beautiful and extremely articulate understanding and description of Marxism.
Also,
Now, to be actually rather frank, I'm just going to go ahead and...
Yo, just yell out to pause it, because I always miss your first couple words. What was that?
No, I mean, he wasn't saying anything. I was just going to try to speak over. But where's the prevalence of Judaism in China then? If communism and Judaism are so intimately linked, like he likes to cherry pick specific things to point to it, but it's not universal, regardless of if we take him at face value or not.
Even if we take him at his word, that the Bolsheviks were secretly Jewish and Lenin was Jewish and Stalin was Jewish, everyone's Jewish. He actually thinks that early China was Jewish, and then Deng Xiaoping was anti-Jewish and undid all the evil Jewishness.
Oh, nice.
Like, I'm serious. This guy actually thinks that. I don't know if maybe he's got like some kind of like severe emotional disorder where he like obsesses, but that's what he sounds like. Like it throughout this debate, you guys, I want everyone to do this, right? Don't just think about the topic being discussed at the moment. Put that together with the larger picture that is being painted. Over the course of this debate, this guy is going to come off like someone with some kind of mental handicap. Like I'm not the mean guy that like makes fun of people, right? But this is how he behaved when he tried to talk to us, and this is how he behaves here. He comes to like everything for him that he dislikes gets labeled Jewish, and that gets like that's sort of his reason to dismiss everything, because for him everything from Jewish people is a lie. So if he can find some way to call it Jewish, he doesn't have to pay attention. Every single thing in the world other than what he likes becomes Jewish. China became Jewish, and then when it broke the records for rising living standards and lifting people out of poverty, actually it's not communist anymore now. Now they're actually Nazis, according to him.
Oh,
It's
nice.
craziest turnaround. Like, I don't know how else to describe this guy. If he ever comes back to one of our spaces, I want to try to let him talk again. As long as he doesn't spurg out and not able to hold a conversation again. But I want to try to like get him to actually like go through. Thank you. My wife was grabbing me coffee. I drink a lot of coffee. Anyway, I want to try to get him to go through and give reasons for anything, because that's what's always lacking are reasons. Anyway, let's keep going.
Say that it's pretty baffling because every single claim that he made, every single claim he had just made within the 5-minute time he was allotted is comprehensively, completely, and without ambiguity a total lie and fabrication. From the claim that the Russian Empire had no debt when it was in fact held by the balls by French banks, and it was in fact the Bolsheviks' cancellation of all of the foreign debt, which was owned by the private banking cartels abroad, that actually got them invaded by the entire world and besieged and embargoed even and sabotaged at every turn, because these capitalists basically had all of their property confiscated and their debts completely liquidated. To his claim that under the beautiful paradise of Tsarist Russia, there was no degeneracy, when you had registered child prostitutes as young as 11 years old who were basically roaming the streets of Russia's major cities with the permission of the state. You're talking about a state where maybe at best by World War I, a quarter of the population could read and write. Abominably low literacy rates where people were living in huts in the overwhelming majority of the country.
And his point about prostitution, child prostitution, this wasn't just the case prior to the revolution. Look at the 1990s. It all came back.
100%. And it's crazy to me that and this is one of the things that really bothers me so much about these neo-Nazi LARPing liberals, because that's what they are, is LARPing liberals. They insult the faith of millions of Americans, including your family, my family, everyone we know who's Christian, when they pretend to be for Christianity and Christian values. But they don't care about that. They care about an aesthetic, a fashion statement, so they can fit it into a subculture, the same as the fake left. This guy doesn't care about actual child prostitution because the czars were so great. He ignores that completely, ignores the fact that the people were oppressed and rose up against them, ignores all of this. I don't know. And then calls himself a Christian.
I love that title, by the way, of his stream.
Which one is it? What?
Debating Crazy Tweaker.
It's good. I mean, he's not wrong. Where's my play button? Why is it not playing?
You just probably maybe click in the middle of the screen.
There we go.
teetering on the edge. If any famine came, they would just basically die in mass numbers, and nobody would do anything about it because nobody cared and they just considered it a humanitarian tragedy. It's precisely such conditions, the rapacious capitalist exploitation of these peasants, stealing their land and then preying on them as wage laborers, the robbing of the peasants of their land, the sending them off to die in a vain war against an overwhelmingly more industrialized Germany, where Russia was so backward it couldn't even sustain itself and defend itself against foreign aggressors. These are the conditions that led to the success of the Bolshevik Party. And regarding the formation of the Russian revolutionary movement, to begin with, it's true that the Tsar Alexander II abolished serfdom, and that's great. But following the abolition of serfdom, all that happened was that the Russian peasantry were placed under debt obligations by creditors and basically became de facto serfs again. The ones that didn't went on to be trafficked and shoved into these factories with abominable working conditions where they were treated like cattle. They had no rights whatsoever. They were living under the most depraved and miserable conditions imaginable. And these were the circumstances that led to the widespread proliferation of Marxist ideas among the underground revolutionary intelligentsia. Marxism has always formed in response to a fundamental oppression and exploitation of the people. They say that how bad the communist regimes were and how terrible communism was, but they never actually go into the weeds and the facts of how terrible and awful it was before and how much communism actually improved things relative to where they were coming from. And moreover, I mean, I don't even know where to begin. Every single thing he said doesn't make any sense when you scrutinize it from the basic perspective of historical fact. How could
this is the problem with them? It's hard to even know where to begin. Like everything they say is so wrong and so twisted around and so built on so many assumptions that only crazy people can have, that it's like, where do you begin with this?
Yeah.
Like, so you have to begin at the very first thing they say, right? That's what I tried to do when I talked to the guy.
Yeah, and then he just said you're interrupting.
Right? And he couldn't even do that. He couldn't get out a single like conversation where we focused on a subject, discussed it, and moved on. You know, it's wild.
And also, just one second. We understand how history progresses. If he's talking about Tsarist Russia like it was all peachy, nothing bad was going on, then the contradictions wouldn't have existed to move history forward in this manner. It's obviously wrong.
Something was going on if an entire revolution happened.
Jewish people being on top and all the Gentiles enslaved, when the majority of communist states throughout history did not have any significant Jewish presence. We're talking about China. We're talking about the DPRK. We're talking about Cuba. We're talking about today's Venezuela, not necessarily communist, but definitely Marxist and socialist. We're talking about, across Africa and South Yemen. The overwhelming majority of communist political construction was happening outside of the West, outside of places that had significant Jewish populations. And this has led a lot of these tweakers who are just pulling things out of their ass, lying about the Bolsheviks, lying about communism, to say that Kim Jong-un is a Jew and that Xi Jinping is a Jew. And at a certain point, people have to wake up and realize, how far are we going to take this complete sham? It's just total fabrication, and they're pulling it all out of their ass. And I can demonstrate that pretty easily.
Appreciate that, Haz. Thank you so much. That was exactly 5 minutes and 15 seconds.
And take it from here. The software
Haz killed it with that intro.
I was using was I had to figure out where to turn it off when it rings, but I got it. Each round from this point forward is going to be how long, Suleiman?
2 minutes. And just before we get on to the next round, you guys, if you can do me a favor, retweet, reshare the space. We have 1,200 people on YouTube, Myron's YouTube channel. We have 900 on Myron's Rumble channel. And I believe we have almost 1,200 on this Twitter space. So retweet, reshare the space, a huge debate. I think everyone's been talking about it. It's going to be fire. So retweet, reshare the space. So we're going to go on to the first round. The first round, as Myron said, is going to be 2 minutes long. We'll do multiple rounds, and then once we think that both sides maybe want to, and then we'll speak and we'll discuss with this both sides. But we're minimum going to do 3 rounds each, and then if we think there's a need for another round, we will. and it'll be 2 minutes long. And the first topic is were the Bolsheviks Jewish? Let me pass it back over to Myron to speak and then conduct the debate.
Sure, no problem. Okay, so the first.
Okay, hold on. Give me a second here because like I thought I had time to. I have an issue with a herniated disc, so I'm like trying to do my stretches, but I did not have time. We have to discuss even this topic because
Yeah,
it's
it's
so
like, why is
messed
it
up. Like, are the Bolsheviks Jewish? Were the Bolsheviks Jewish? How is this a question of debate? How is this a question of debate? This is why even like this is why they're like astroturfing this. The Zionists are the ones doing it, really. Is so dangerous because it forces us to take questions like this seriously that are very easily debunked with just looking it up.
Mhm.
Right? Like there is no period in Soviet history where the Bolsheviks were Jewish. They weren't theoretically Jewish. They weren't numerically Jewish. Nothing. Yes, of course there were Jewish people in it, right? But like the idea that it is a Jewish thing is silly. And from the framing of whether they were Jewish or not as a debate automatically implies that there's something wrong with the fact if they were. You know what I mean? Like, who cares if they were? They weren't, but who cares?
Yeah, exactly.
While we're on it, we got an interesting super chat from Mig. Let me get to it real quick. Sorry. He said about 2 years ago, Lightheller seemed like a decent enough multipolarity, bro. Now he's just some deranged JQer. He wasn't like that before. That's interesting to me. Because again, this entire thing is astroturf. Think about this. Elon Musk is an arch Zionist. Silicon Valley are all down with Zionism, right? He brings back Nick Fuentes to X out of nowhere directly after they looked through the entire Palestine solidarity movement, calling us all anti-Semites and couldn't find it.
Did you hear the stuff about 4chan?
What about it?
So I don't know if this was verified or not, but apparently, like there was a hack and the data got dumped, and in the politics forum or board or whatever, apparently the vast majority or the majority of the posts are made by Israeli IPs. So it's to your point about it benefiting them. I mean, this sort of casual anti-Semitism explaining history just by nonsense JQ stuff. It's a lot more helpful than to their position than for us to actually organize and to look into the history of these things, because it's very easy to say, look at these rabid anti-Semites versus look at these people who have a detailed explanation of the historical context of Zionism and what it functions to do.
Precisely, brother. Precisely.
First topic is, were the Bolsheviks Jewish? I guess I'll turn it over to Truth Teller again. I got 2 minutes on the clock. Once you start speaking truth, I'll hit the timer, and then again I'll give you a 10-second thing. Sorry.
One of the things I really despise when like people like this lie teller guy, which I like calling him that, is when they manipulate language in order to avoid having to make a point and try to imply things through that. So like this guy calling himself truth teller, every single time they refer to him, they have to refer to him as truth teller. And whether you like notice it or not, that goes into your subconscious. Like the way you receive information isn't all just on the surface, right? There's a dialectical relationship between your assumptions, what you bring to it, the context, and what's going into you on a subconscious level, along with the empirical things being discussed. So the language you use in order to discuss a fact matters. It matters so much. And when people use specifically dishonest language, like this guy calling himself a truth teller while lying to people, right? Like even just lying about knowing what communism is a problem, right? Like that when bourgeois journalists go to journalism school, they teach them how to use language to manipulate an emotional response with any headline they're writing or article they're writing. It's what we have to be always constantly aware of.
And that's why they like to use bots as well, because stuff like second order observation is so powerful. If you see a post and all the comments are just supporting, Israel or supporting Ukraine, you, the average person who's massively uninformed, is just going to go with that.
Precisely. Again, what you just said about there was an info dump on 4chan, and most of these accounts came from Palestine by the Zionists, right? I mean, we have to think a lot more deeply than just on the surface, guys. We really do.
Sorry about that first mishap with the software, but I got it figured out now. So once you start going, dude, I'll start the timer.
Sure, yeah, thank you. Yes, the Bolsheviks were primarily Jewish, not all Jewish.
Okay. I also want you guys to pay attention to what he's doing here. It's this Gish Gallop thing I was talking about. He is going to rattle off a chain of different lies on different topics and then forcing us to take them in, leaving the opponent to only be able to respond to one, if that, or say like everything you're saying is a lie. And if he does that enough, which he does, your opponent comes off as just claiming everything you say is a lie and unable to argue. Now, Haz overcomes this, especially by pointing it out that he can't ever zero in and defend a topic. But I just want you guys
And
to
you don't need to take
recognize
my word
that.
for it. Take the word of Vladimir Putin, who stated that around 85% of the Soviet regime was made up of Jews. Why don't you take the word of Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who actually served in the Red Army, unlike anyone here? And he was also a prisoner in the gulags, and he said the majority of the Soviet regime was also Jewish. And
Again,
Isn't that the Gulag Archipelago guy?
yeah, his other book was super anti-Semitic. When Solzhenitsyn went into prison in the Soviet Union, it was for fascist and anti-Semitic organizing with the intent to harm. So, like, the guy was trying. I mean, I don't. Again, it's hard to know where to start, right? But again, here he chooses to believe people who seem to confirm his preconception rather than just seeing if what they said was correct or not. Right?
And even if we concede his point, which is wrong again, the logical conclusion is these Jewish Bolsheviks cured his cancer. So
No kidding.
he broke it down. He actually went up to about 95% and said it was Jewish. And I can name names. Of course, the likes of Sverdlov or Yagoda, Yeshov, Beria, Kaganovich, and just so many more names, Naftali Frankel. And it was, of course, funded by Jews. It was not just funded by Jews, it was created by Jews, as I mentioned. It was used to create the manifestos. I've already mentioned Karl Marx and, of course, Moses Hess. It was used to finance it from Max Warburg, of course, Jacob Schiff, and Armand Hammer, Ashberg. And it was used to carry it out under the leadership of Trotsky and also Lenin, who is a quarter Jewish at the very least, and Sverdlov and many of the other militants, terrorists who came and invaded Russia. And of course, the first law they instituted was an anti-Semitism law to ensure they would be protected and they could use their law, because they canceled all the laws of the Tsar's regime, to essentially destroy any type of dissent.
Okay. You guys see the Gish Gallop there? He went from Lenin was at least a quarter Jewish, which is a lie. By the way, that was propagated by a fake documentary produced by neo-Nazis called Battle Europa, or Europa the Last Battle, or whatever the fuck they called it. And in their own telegram, they admitted they were lying. Like, they admitted it. And this guy didn't care, obviously, because it doesn't go with his narrative. And then he goes to this other lie where he says that the first law that the Soviet Union put in place, which you don't put laws in place one by one, by the way. That's stupid right there. But he said it was an anti-Semitism law. Now, this has a kernel of truth, but he's saying it dishonestly. There were laws in the Soviet Union against any sort of discrimination based on nationality or religion, right? Not specifically against Jews, but against all national minorities and all religions. So the notion that it's an anti-Semitism law is incorrect. It's also not the first law. So again, another lie. And then he backs it up with this nonsense where he pretends he can read their minds, right? So if what he's doing to try to prove the conclusion that they're all Jewish and evil is, well, they made this law to protect themselves because they're Jewish and evil. So he's using his premise as his conclusion, right? That's not how logic works. It's just not. If we don't have his preconception that they were all Jewish and evil, then he's just like using what he's trying to prove as a thing to try to prove it. It doesn't, that doesn't work. Anyway, keep it going.
Because this was not a tolerant society out to help anybody. It was just out to help themselves and acid strip the country, which is the first thing they did when they stole the gold. In addition to that, they carved out a Jewish oblast for themselves. They were also building settlements for themselves. That's what Kaganovich was doing on the outside.
What was that?
You mean cancel the debts?
Yeah, that's actually one of the very first things they was cancel all the debts of the czars. He's going to say this like acid thing a bunch of times. You can tell he has like keywords he wants to hit as many times as possible, which is again another dishonest tactic.
Skirts of Ukraine, they were just stealing land and stealing resources while they were killing off slaves within the gulags and forcing them to work for meals while they owned nothing, because communism entails owning nothing and making no profit, zero. The complete antithesis to what was going on in the Tsars under the Tsars rule, where he
okay, communism is owning nothing and making no profit. I'd like you to point him to every communist country in history.
But also, he said this is a complete contrast to what was happening under the Tsar. So he's implying that everything was great. Everyone had tons of food. Everyone is making tons of profit. Then why'd they have to have a revolution? Explain that. I don't understand.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy. Who's this comrade? Okay, so I'm going to tell you guys something. I am suspicious of any account that calls themselves comrade something and like plasters themselves in hammers and sickles and stuff like that, because honestly, like it just seems so like something an anti-communist would do to make us look bad.
Also,
who's this comrade Hogan guy? Which, by the way, like Hulk Hogan is awesome, but like
to say this while we're literally dispelling JQ talking points is
right.
Bizarre.
We're like pushing Nazis around right now. This is like how they ally to Nazis, right? We're fighting the Nazis right now. This guy wants to fight against us so badly that he's put himself on the side of the Nazis in this fight.
He allowed for everyone to own property, have property rights, bear arms, have rights, have insurance, and also literacy rates. He mentioned the literacy rates, where they were over 56% by 1897, and they were on their way to being 100% within 20 years.
Where does he get this crazy number that 56% of Russians in the late 1800s were literate? That's insane.
And what does it mean it was on its way to reaching 100%? Did it or did it not?
No. Look, I hate to use anecdotal evidence, but do you know the reason my grandmother loved the communists? My grandparents weren't really political. My grandmother loved the communists because they taught her to read. They came to her, cadre came to her village with that specific goal to teach people to read. They were going to bring, or they built a library. This was later on that they built it. But as this is happening, they were going house to house, asking the wives there while the husbands were away at work. Because remember, this is early. They were asking them if they could read and if they wanted to read. And my grandmother's favorite memory from back in the old country is sitting on her mother's lap with the communists teaching them how to read.
It gives people their dignity.
Exactly. It allows you to be a thinking human being, you know? Yeah, for real, Exodus, for real. What are we... Yo, Satric, what are we trying to colonize? All right, let's keep it going.
Because they were building 10,000 schools a year. So it baffles my mind that somebody would lie about literacy rates in Russia, or lie about the fact there were famous scientists within Russia that were doing all kinds of incredible things, from building
That's time,
cars,
truth.
trains,
That's time.
planes.
I'll add an extra 5.
Okay. This guy is talking about science in Tsarist Russia while ignoring the fact that the Soviet Union invented fucking space travel. I mean, oh, is this what he said? Okay, sorry. Yes, of course there are Nazis in the chat right now because we're dismantling Nazi arguments. If you have any like sort of size of audience, you're gonna get trolls, buddy. You really got to stop befriending Nazis. You really do, man. Please.
For Haz. Haz, whenever you're
Thank
ready,
you,
I'll
long
get going.
guy. Thank you, brother.
Sure, the literacy rates were absolutely nothing close to 56% for the overall population of the Russian Empire. That's just blatantly a lie, just like all the other things you just said in your little spiel there. So there was never a point in which the Bolshevik leadership, however you looked at it, was majority Jewish. And there was only 5% of the Bolshevik party as a total were Jewish in general. Now, there were some prominent Jewish personalities in the Bolshevik party. And the question you have to ask is, what are the causes of that? If the causes of that are the consequence of some kind of in-group Jewish orchestrated conspiracy to assert their interests at the expense of Gentiles, why did these Jewish members of the Bolshevik leadership not act in unison? Why were they constantly forming on opposite sides of the debates, on opposite sides of the power struggles? For example, Zinoviev and Kamenev fighting against Trotsky in the 1920s. For example, Yagoda, a Jew, being the one who shot Zinoviev and Kamenev and oversaw their executions. Why was it that, and Kaganovich, who was Stalin's right-hand man, who himself was totally against these other Jewish personalities. So if we're going to go with the idea that this is mainly a Jewish thing and that these are all Jews working together to assert their interests, how do we explain the fact that they are constantly on the opposite sides of different factions within the Soviet government and within the Bolshevik party? It doesn't have any explanatory value and it doesn't make any sense. If we actually want to get into the weeds of why there was a Jewish presence at all in the first place in the early years, we could get into that and I'd be happy to. But any notion that it was coming from this in-group Jewish orchestrated conspiracy is complete bullshit. Regarding foreign funding, there's absolutely zero evidence whatsoever that there was any foreign funding for the Bolshevik Revolution in particular. All sources demonstrate very clearly that all of the capitalists abroad who were hopeful about the February Revolution, as soon as the October Revolution happened, where they basically canceled all the foreign debt, they completely rejected the revolutionary movement in Russia and actually supported war efforts by capitalist governments to invade the revolutionary Russia and depose the Soviet government. So that's completely fabricated and completely made up.
That is time. All right. So
Okay.
I think you went about 7 over there. It's fine. You guys kind of evened out from there. Do another. I guess we'll do another one so that they can.
Yeah.
At least two more, yeah, each.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Truth, go ahead. I got 2 minutes on the clock when you're ready.
Sure, yeah, thank you. So it absolutely was foreign funded. There's no way you can finance a 90,000 plus army coming from New York with bags of gold to be able to pay off mostly Jewish army by Trotsky.
So here he goes again, just basically saying nuh-uh, right? Like Haz is like, that's ridiculous that you're saying they have foreign funding. And he goes, yeah, they did. Doesn't give us any reasons, doesn't give us any sources. No, he just says, The fact remains there is zero actual evidence this is true. There was a neo-Nazi silly like conspiracy theory thing years ago where they talked about like, actually the Bolsheviks were funded by Wall Street. So why did the Bolsheviks get invaded by the people that Wall Street controlled? Right? Like, why were they robbing banks to fund the revolution? It's just like it's him leaping to a conclusion, and he does this and he gives himself away right at the beginning. He's like, there's no other way to do X, Y, and Z. Like, well, you need to look into how they got their money.
Mhm.
You can't just make an assumption. This is how a child thinks. And maybe that's like this guy's issue. Maybe he had some, TBI or like brain injury or something that like stalled his thinking when he was like 9 or something.
Also, if anyone's interested in a full stream breaking down the Judeo-Bolshevik myth, I linked the stream down below.
Tight.
By the way, he was the one who created the Red Army, and he was, of course, a Jew. Nobody disputes that part, at least. With help from Lenin, Stalin, Sverdlov, and many of the other leaders who would go on to massacre close to 100 million Russians based on many different estimates from many different scholars. It's not even really denied anymore that they killed a lot of people just because they could. And the whole objective
according to
was,
Black
again,
Book
to
of
asset
Communism?
strip the country, because the first...
Hold on. So now his claim is that they killed a lot of people because they could and wanted to, quote unquote, acid strip the country. What does that mean, by the way? Is this some like stupid, like rightist, like word I don't know, acid strip? Is it a real thing?
I have no idea. Should I
You
get
haven't
this
heard
guy out of
either?
here, by the way?
What, the weird?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Sater Barak, what guy? That guy?
I put him in a timeout. If he comes back, I'll just ban him.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you for the 5, brother. How's it? A great job. Props to him for debating anti-Semitic tail gribble. Facts. Yeah, like so he says that.
Asset strip. Asset.
strip.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. That makes a little more sense, I guess. But how is it, if this is their goal, how is it they go from being a third world country to the first country in outer space, the second biggest economy in the world, and the only real competition to American imperialism within a handful of decades, if their goal is to asset strip the country?
All while killing 100 million people because they felt like it.
Dude, right. Like he also says 200 million at one point.
They did was steal the gold. There absolutely was a massive Jewish presence. I already cited Alexander Solzhenitsyn. No comment on that. And he's a subject matter expert. Even Putin said he respects him. Even Putin stated 85% of the leadership was Jewish. So did Dmitry Gordon, a Ukrainian journalist who's Jewish, the top journalist in Ukraine. He even admitted, based on all the research he's done, people should look him up. He's a very intelligent guy. He said the leadership was primarily Jewish as well, and it served for the main purpose.
Again, you're going to notice this pattern with him throughout the debate. He believed a guy who wrote a thing.
Again, taking the assets from Russia, installing the bank, and getting back at the Goy, getting back at the Slavs, who Karl Marx absolutely hated. He called them genetic trash.
Okay. So, if this is why they were doing it, to get back at people who were not Jews, and Slavs who, I guess, he doesn't count Slavs who were Jews, but does who weren't. It's very confusing. But if this is why they were doing everything they did, I want a single word written by any communist in history that even gives that implication.
Yeah, exactly.
You are absolutely right, long guy. We're going to call him lie teller because I'm refusing to let him lie through language too. Anyway, let's roll it on out.
And what's amusing to me is this foreign invasion that took place, because most of these guys were not even native Russian that showed up there. Why would anybody defending their interest over the actual Russians who were subject to the massacres that would take place? And let's look at who actually got killed. The majority of the people that got killed were mainly Orthodox Christians. Their churches were destroyed. Over 200,000 priests and monks were killed. Close to 54,000 were destroyed or turned into wheat silos because, again, there was a process of collectivization that would lead to famines like the Holodomor to slaughter people deliberately by design. Now, Holodomor, for those who don't know, just means death.
You see what he's doing? Hopping from topic to topic like that.
Can't even pronounce it.
Right?
Starvation. It wasn't even the first one. They were doing it all throughout the 20s because they could never figure out farming.
Okay.
Wait, they could never figure out farming, but they ended famines.
So they killed. They starved everyone because they wanted to get back at them, and then couldn't figure out farming. So this guy's argument is that during the Tsarist period, when peasants were using hand sickles to reap their crops, the Russians had farming all figured out. But then the communist revolution happens, and suddenly all of these people forget how to do this.
Yeah, notice how he didn't mention a single famine under the Tsarist period.
Right. Like the Volga famine just didn't happen. I don't know. You're not wrong, Joey. You're not wrong. It's just, wow.
All right.
Is that it?
There's another guy.
Yeah. No, that's time now.
Okay, I never hear you say 10 seconds.
I literally say it, but you don't hear me because you're talking.
Oh, sorry.
But
You know what? I'll start setting my own timer. It's fine.
no. I say it, but then you just keep going, and then I'll say it again, and then by then it's already 10 seconds. But, all right. Haz, you ready?
Yep.
1 second. Yeah, girl. I was gonna mention this too. Like the guy's just like a like Russophobe scumbag. Who's like specifically lies in mainstream media all the time. Thanks for pointing that out, though.
Oh yeah, and he kept bringing up Solzhenitsyn. Didn't his wife admit that he was a liar?
Yes, his wife like straight up said that like she watched him make up the Gulag Archipelago.
Yeah.
And by the way, the Gulag Archipelago is a fiction book. These people who cite it like it's history drive me crazy. Like they clearly haven't ever read it. It says right in the subtitle, an experiment in literary investigation.
It's like citing Animal Farm.
Right. It's like he's using his literature to investigate something. He's making it up. It's fiction. Like, it's unreal how dumb people are and how easily they just like fall into getting manipulated like that.
All right.
So Solzhenitsyn was a prolific liar and a complete bullshitter who betrayed his own motherland and fabricated a bunch of claims. I don't know why you're making it seem like anything he says should be taken as fact. There's no primary source evidence whatsoever that suggests the outlandish and ridiculous claims he makes regarding how the revolutionary government was funding its actual overwhelmingly Russian army, Red Army, that was manned by the Russian peasantry. They didn't need to fund it because they just seized the Russians and peasants. They seized all the factories. They seized all the energy. They seized all the resources. They seized all the wealth. They just took it. That's what the revolution did. And that's why the foreign capitalists bankrolled the actual foreign invasion of Russia, which was actually led by global capitalist powers on behalf of the white movement to depose the revolutionary government, to get back their loans, to get back their wealth, and to get back, for example, Royal Dutch Shell. All of its oil was simply taken by the Soviet government. Because the Russian Empire's resources and oil, it was all owned by foreigners. So this idea that they needed somehow outside funding when all they had to do was just mobilize the working class and the peasantry to just rise up and seize the wealth, it's ridiculous. They didn't need any foreign funding. They were a highly organized organization for decades. I mean, you haven't even studied anything about how the Bolsheviks were organized. You don't know anything about their origins. You haven't even read any of Lenin's works or writings. You couldn't possibly understand what they were motivated or compelled by. You say that it was all about Jewish revenge against Gentiles, but have you ever read a single word of Lenin? Do you know anything about the actual ideology or the outlook of Marxism? Do you know anything about the debates and polemics and discussions that were happening in the early revolutionary period within Russia? Have you ever actually set yourself to the task of even trying to comprehend or understand Marxism? No, you're just resorting to these crazy claims. You mentioned this one Jewish rabbi who claims that communism is Judaism. I could give you like dozens of more quotes by actual reputable Christians, by the way, including the Pope, including Orthodox Christians.
Right. That was 10 seconds right there. I'll do it that way since it'll be easier. I said 10 seconds, but I don't think Haz heard me. So I'll unmute this space again, and I'll turn it over to.
All they're doing for is searching for thought terminating cliches. Like if to them they can say something that sort of ends it there, then they'll do. They don't have to think anymore at that point, you know?
Yeah, no kidding. It's like, what was I just gonna say? Oh, it's all of it. All of it is to avoid ever asking the question, well, is this correct or incorrect? Right? And here's the thing, like, so we can go into this question of like, okay, this like guy, he loves to quote and say communism is actually Judaism. Okay, let's entertain that notion. Let's go into the facts. Let's see what communism is. Let's see what Judaism is and see if he's correct. Right? We can do the same for the guys Haz is talking about, the Christians, right? And I guarantee you, Jesus Christ as a figure who was Jewish and the center of Christianity was a revolutionary of his time, right? If he were born again right now, he would absolutely be a communist.
Yeah, and I saw that Michael Hudson quote where it was like his crucifixion was really a matter of debt and the threat he posed to the creditors.
Precisely. Absolutely, 100%. This guy is interesting to me. So this is like a typical narrative of these neo-Nazi like cowards, right? They go, oh, you guys are just being politically correct because they can't imagine a world where we think they're stupid, right? It's not that we are afraid to say Jews run everything. It's that you're wrong about that and we're mocking you for thinking that because it's so absurd and ridiculous, and you are terrified to look at whether it's true or not because you've made it so much a part of you and married yourself to this pathetic basement dwelling subculture where your parents, and you know this, Jake, are ashamed of you, that you can't question it. Like, let's be real. Every one of these kids, like watching all these Fuentes streams and calling everybody Jew and all that, their parents are ashamed of them if they know about the subculture. If they don't, then it's a secret, and they know if their parents knew, they would be ashamed.
Truth teller, because I think that's the easier way to go. Because I think sometimes you guys aren't hearing me when I say 10 seconds, 10 seconds.
Do you want me to time it, Myron? Because I think it is your mics getting over a bed by their mics.
That could be it too. It's up to you. If you want.
Yeah, let me try this round, and then if it doesn't work, then we'll do the mute thing.
Sure, no problem. Go ahead, Truth teller, whenever you're ready. And
Truth, go ahead.
I
appreciate it, Myron. Go ahead, Truth. 2 minutes start now.
Sure, yeah, thank you. So look, nobody needs to take my word for it. Let's look at what's from his.
Let me say something. The Hogan guy with the suspicious profile said something important. The significance of race. I think here's one of the things that always bothers me about these sort of like weirdos. They can't decide whether Jewishness is a race, an ethnicity, or a religion. It's always whatever fits into their narrative at a given time. There is something significant to race, especially in America, right? Where even the concept comes about. I mean, the anti-racist struggle was like the primary form of class struggle in this country for how long? You know what I mean? Like 2 revolutions waged against the color line. I mean, come on. Okay. We're gonna dig into this one just because I'm having fun with the trolls.
What does progressive even mean to people like this?
Right. Like it's silly. And you notice never a reason. They can't ever have a reason because there isn't one. There's nothing ever to back up anything they say. And they wonder why we mock them and call them pathetic. Right? Because that's not how an adult even thinks. An adult logically forms conclusions. They don't react emotionally like that, Jake. Right?
Also, this is exactly what we are saying fundamentally.
Precisely, yeah. Oh, maybe Hogan isn't as suspicious as
we agree with you on this point.
Yeah. Joey, thanks for the 2, brother. Control. Oh, guys. All right.
Historian said about Russia under the Tsar's regime to see if it was so horrible. Let's look at what William Howard Taft said. He, in fact, said that the Tsar created an incredible and advanced labor system that was a boon to the entire Russian economy. He was so impressed by it. It was something he wanted to bring back home. And even though he was told personally to abrogate the treaty with Russia that had been in place since 1832 for commerce and navigation, he didn't want to do it. Of course, commerce still forced him to do it because American Jews were putting pressure to cease relationships with Russia.
Oh my God, I don't care about Howard fucking Taft, you nerd.
The only thing I know about him was that he couldn't fit in a bathtub.
Like, none of this is important at all. He, like,
to try to isolate the country under the Tsar's regime. It was part of the reason why they instigated World War I to begin with. Now, again, let's look at some of what took place while these Jews took power in the USSR. I like to let actions speak. Who cares what the words are, what Lenin or Stalin, whoever said? Why would you institute an anti-Semitism law? The first thing that you do if you're not in charge, you obviously want to protect yourself as the...
Okay. He says, why is it important? Like, it's not important what they wrote, but here's me attempting to read their minds when they wrote what they thought. You don't have to try to read their minds, you
Also,
weirdo.
It's incredibly obvious why they would want to institute something that cracks down on social chauvinism, right? Like, the whole point of the struggle is that you're uniting them on the basis of class. All this does is to seek to atomize these people. Of course you want to get rid of anti-Semitism. Of course you want to get rid of any of this on the basis of ethnicity, religion, anything.
Precisely. And by the way, like, you can go through the entire Soviet laws. It's an anti-discrimination law that he's twisting in order to fit his narrative, right? Welcome, brother. Looking forward to seeing what you got. We're always excited to see new members.
We don't criticize the Anglos. We're criticizing a class. We're saying it's not inherent to any ethnicity, whether or not that be Jewish or Anglo-Saxon, whatever the fuck you're...
That's a good point. You know, it's like, and I've tried to do this to these like losers before. Look, the actual truth is that the ruling class of America and like what you could call globalism or international finance capital, whatever, is overwhelmingly white, Anglo-Saxon, and Protestant, right? This isn't a dig on whiteness, Anglo-Saxonness, or Protestantness, right? It's not essential to what finance capital is.
Yeah, is Jack Ma Wasp?
Right. The problem in society is finance capital.
Mhm.
It's monopoly. It's compounding interest rates, et cetera, right? Thinking that it's Jewishness is, again, it's just how a child thinks. Like, it's reacting to some random thing. It's like getting a, you get a green car and get in an accident. So you begin hating the color green rather than questioning your driving. You know what I mean? Like, it's an inability to think. It's the way children think.
The ruling class. Why would you be carving out a Jewish oblast for yourself if you're not in charge? I thought communism was supposed to be based on egalitarianism and classless. So why is a certain group being protected and given its own property? Why is it that Stalin supported the establishment of a Zionist state close to 1947, 1948, when he voted in favor of creating Israel? And he also, of course, spoke Hebrew and he spoke Yiddish as well. He was married to Rosa Kaganovich's sister, and he had kids with her, of course. And he was no one's going to call him a devout Jew by any means, but he was, of course, ethnically Jewish himself. And what these Jews like to do, the ones that came from Russia, essentially, is they like to hide their identity because a lot of them came from the Pale settlements where they were restricted with what they could do for work. So they pretend to convert over to some kind of Christian faith, so this way they could find other opportunities within Russia. But in fact, they remained Jews, crypto Jews, in fact. So they absolutely were. I'll take Putin's word for it. I'll take social
Again, I believe this guy, I believe that guy, and here's a bunch of nonsense I made up because I don't ever look into the facts. Well, they did this and hid that they were Jewish and this and that. I think maybe this is how it could have gone. It's all a fantasy. It's literally a Dungeons and Dragons adventure that this guy is going on in his head. He takes this thing and doesn't look anything up. right? He doesn't read anything. Nothing. There's no actual study on this topic he wants to talk about. He lets his imagination go. He's like, well, okay, if they want to do this and this, they'd have to do that. That's all it is. It's him on a Dungeons and Dragons adventure. This guy is a straight up wizard.
Nixon's word for it. I'll take Dmitry Gordon's word for it that the majority of the Soviet regime was absolutely Jewish because they benefited themselves.
Time. Brilliant. And then Haz, go ahead for your 2 minutes.
Yep, sure. So here's the thing. You're claiming that Russia was this paradise before communism. 1 in 4 of every baby that was born died of infant mortality. That number was reduced by a quarter after the Soviet industrialization and modernization efforts. So what you're saying is a complete lie on that front. Now, this idea that there was an anti-Semitism law is a complete fabrication. Just because you saw a JPEG somewhere on Twitter claiming it doesn't mean it's true. There was never a single law in the Soviet legal code at any point in the history of the Soviet Union which specifically outlined anti-Semitism. There was a general law against the spreading of racial enmity in general. So this applies to Armenians, Azeris, Georgians, and all the other minorities. Nothing exclusively about anti-Semitism whatsoever. It's a complete lie and fabrication. I'm willing to go through the entire Soviet legal code throughout the 1930s, throughout the 20s.
All right. This guy in our chat, this Jake, you're going to have 2 choices right now in front of you, buddy. So I want you to pay attention, okay? Choice 1. When we start our space for the night, you're going to join, and you're going to be the first one in, and you're going to give me a single reason rather than all the nonsense you're spitting into my chat right now. Or 2, I'm going to ban you. The choice is up to you, but I can't take this spam and nonsense anymore, man. I can't. It's killing me. Like the cope and the lying and the silliness. So we're at that point of the night. You can either, shut up and play nice. You can actually try to give me a reason for something, or it can ban you. It's up to you, buddy.
Throughout the 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever you want, and we can go through it one by one, and you'll find there's absolutely nothing. Now, regarding this claim that the Jewish Autonomous Oblast means that Jews were in power, what about all of the other small ethnic minorities? Not to mention all of the actual Soviet republics for Georgians, for Armenians, for Azeris, for Ukraine, for Belarus, for so many other nationalities, all the ASSRs, for all of the sub ethnic groups and nationalities within the SSRs. Everyone was given their own territory. They experimented briefly with the idea of giving the Jews their own oblast. It wasn't even an ASSR. It wasn't even an SSR. Somewhere deep in the Far East, like in Siberia, and it wasn't even popular among them. How does that somehow explain that they're in power, that they're being given this small sliver of very infertile, inhospitable land all the way in fucking Siberia, that this somehow proves they're in power? It doesn't even make any sense.
10 seconds.
Yeah, sure.
Look, and this is something Haz is going to have to repeat the entire time. Nothing this guy is saying makes any sense. He makes up so much random crap and just throws it out there at you. Wow.
No, sorry, yeah, 10 seconds.
Oh, yeah, I mean, that's all.
Oh, okay, brilliant. So, guys, Haz and Truth, you've done 3 rounds on this topic. Do you want to do 1 or 2 more rounds, or do you want to move on to the next topic?
Sure. No, we can keep going.
Or you want to do 1 more round on it at least?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Let me. Okay, I'm about to start the timer. Yeah, go ahead, Truth.
Sure, yeah, thank you. It's cute that he's concerned about the infant mortality rate under the Tsar, while abortion was illegal on and off during the communist regime, and they did 200 million abortions, killing unborn babies.
Okay. Listen to what he just said again. What are we at?
Also, even if it's true, the 200 million seems like an outlandish number.
Agreement from 1941, where they took $1 billion from America, and they took $11 billion more. Otherwise, they would have never had any chance in World War II. Did you forget? $20 million from Jacob Schiff in 1917.
Hold on.
And then that obviously got paid back with the stolen
It wasn't even an ASSR. It wasn't even an
agreement from 1941 where they took $1 billion from America and they took a garden because they were agreement from 1941 where they took $1 billion from America. Explain that, because the population was decimated so hard.
Okay, this is driving me crazy. Hold on. Sorry, guys. I wish
Might
that
be easier in full screen.
I don't like that Kick doesn't have a back 10 seconds button.
Yeah.
By abortion, by
Okay.
famine.
Okay, here we go. So I'll just repeat it. This guy said that it's cute that Haz brings up the fact that 1 in 4 babies died during childbirth, meaning a 25% infant mortality rate before the revolution. When after the revolution, there was a period when abortion was legalized, and then he legalized and legalized again, in which they performed 200 million abortions. Do you know? I don't even think there were that many women in all of the Soviet Union.
Nope.
Like, do you see how this guy just lies with such ease? Nothing he says is a fact. Nothing he says is honest. 200 million abortions. That's insane.
Yeah, it looks like there aren't even 100 million or even close to 100 million women in Russia today. So,
Right.
also
exactly.
just for future reference, if you do the forward arrow key, it skips 30 seconds in the video, and then the back one goes back by 10 seconds.
Oh, good to know. All right, let's keep going.
By the disease, by, of course, legalization of homosexuality, LGBTQ, degeneracy, filth, usury, and he tries to claim there wasn't debt during the USSR. Of course they were in debt. What about the land lease agreement from 1941 where they took $1 billion from America and they took $11 billion more? Otherwise, they would have never had any chance in World War II. Did you forget? $20 million from...
Dude, Lend-Lease was like 4% of Soviet war production. The idea that Lend-Lease, which, yes, was a debt, right? Kind of. But the idea that that's significant in any way to the efforts in World War II, where the Soviet people heroically defeated world fascism, sacrificing over 20 million people to the cause of humanity, is just ludicrous, man. Like, again, everything this guy says is nonsense.
Jacob Schiff in 1917. And then that obviously got paid back with the stolen gold. You couldn't even figure out manufacturing or farming or anything like that. You needed help. You signed a Rapallo agreement with the Germans. You supposedly...
Okay. You couldn't figure out manufacturing. How does this guy think that technology works? Like, how does this guy think that? Like, you don't just figure out technology. You build on what came before. You make deals with people who have technology you need, right? Like, this is what every country in the history of technology has ever done, in the history of countries. This is the dumbest thing to say. Like, the guy is so desperate to paint communism as everything bad and his weird nonsense is everything good that he just makes crap up.
Yeah, I mean, Russia prior to the revolution was the weakest link in the imperial chain. It makes sense they have to catch up. The same thing is the case with China. They're
Right.
a developing nation. I mean, they've now probably passed, the rest of the world in technology in a lot of sectors. But as they're developing, you take other people's technology and adapt it and improve it.
hated so much so they could help you build infrastructure. And then you sign up on a deal with Henry Ford in 1929 because you couldn't figure out how to build cars, tractors, trucks, or do any type of farming. All you knew how to do is collectivize based on the minimal that you were doing. Ours reign, Russia was considered the world's bread garden because they were exporting
The world bread garden, no.
so much wheat, oil, barley, rye, etc. I say, look at the numbers. I posted all this stuff. I've got over 42,000 posts to my name in many articles. You can see that compared to what the communists were.
I believe he has 42,000 posts, and I guarantee you all of them are schizophrenic rants like this. Jesus Christ, man.
42,000
Under the
cries for
Tsar's reign?
help.
Dude, look at like Haz has the patience of a goddamn saint. Like I'm
Yeah.
a patient guy. I would not have been able to deal with all of this. This
It's-
is like absurd levels of crazy.
It's a format that forces them to not speak over each other, and he's still getting fucking flustered and upset.
Right.
Nobody starved to death.
10
There were no
seconds.
mass famines. So you can clearly see the difference where when during
There were
one
no mass
reign
famines
you've
in
got
Tsarist
sport-
Russia?
Dude, he's just making things up. There were no famines before the
Huh?
revolution in Russia. Jesus Christ, dude. Like, you see what I mean? Like, everything these people believe is nonsensical. It's historically inaccurate and untrue. I can't believe anyone like what could be the purpose of just lying like that, right? If you have a real political project, if your political project is real, you need the truth, right?
Mhm.
Because you're actually trying to accomplish something. This guy strikes me as like a Zionist doing this in order to drum up anti-Semitism and give excuses to Zionists to commit genocide.
Well,
Like-
to him, it's more important to be an ideologue, right? Like, you don't have to tell the truth if your only goal is to convince people.
Precisely. Like, what if it's like my options right now are either he's a Zionist. I mean, it is an anonymous account. He doesn't show his face, right? He doesn't nothing there. It's a picture and a voice, right? That's it. And crazy rants. So to me, he's either like has a severe mental handicap. Like, I don't understand what else could be with this obsession, right? Like, I don't. Or he's a Zionist doing this in order to drum up support for Zionism.
A collectivization process with the other. You're the world's garden basket, and you're a net
Time.
exporter.
I appreciate that.
World's
Okay,
garden
we're gonna do
basket.
one last round on this, but it's sorry, Haz still has to go. Go ahead, Haz. Sorry. 1 second, just give me 2 seconds. Okay, yeah, go.
Lend-Lease was completely negligible. It was all 85% of it came after the decisive battles that actually turned the tide of the war already. Historians estimate that it only shortened the war maybe by a few months, actually. So Lend-Lease was completely negligible. It was about 4% of the supplies that they had used, and it was old. It wasn't even used in time. So that is complete nonsense. It's one of the fucking Russophobic myths that are used by NATO and Western countries today to downgrade the Soviet effort during the war. Now, regarding the problem of the demographic crisis, people not having enough kids, well, when you modernize and you industrialize, that tends to be what happens. It's happening in Japan today. It's happening in South Korea. It's even happening in China. It's a global crisis in general. You can't blame communism specifically for that. India, a very poor, impoverished country, had a huge explosive birth rate. We know that very, very poor, kind of really, really backwoods countries tend to have high birth rates. Doesn't mean there's some kind of advanced civilization. This whole thing about the legalization of homosexuality.
He's heroically going down the list here.
Mhm.
But I just want to say here, like, the lower birth rates, like all of these like demographic obsessions that all these nerds have, it's like they focus on birth rates. Like, yes, as a country modernizes, birth rates go down.
Mhm.
The reason they had so many kids is because they were necessary to run a household, right? And I mean, the conditions within capitalism are such that you don't have that many kids. Now, in our era right now, there's less and less kids being born because of the lack of a future in capitalism,
Mhm.
right? So, like, again, it's just all he does is take something that happened, and if it didn't happen, he'll make it up, and then attach some random ass guess that he made, an assumption, and act as if that's the truth. There's zero actual critical thought in any of this.
Sexuality is complete bullshit. They threw out the entire legal code in the early years of the revolution. That didn't mean they institutionalized or tolerated homosexuality. It was still being persecuted under common law. So that's another complete lie. By the way,
Yeah, the thing about homosexuality is also true, and this is something liberals talk about. They try to act as if the Soviet Union were like these like queer theorist people. They weren't.
Yeah.
There was a narrative in the Soviet Union, and it's got a lot of truth in it because the beginning of this sort of theoretical study was done in Nazi Germany, where they associated homosexuality, effeminate men, etc., with fascism, because the peasants in Russia, that was their only experience with that kind of thing, really, was with the fascists. So, I mean, that's not really the case. We have a lot better psychological research these days, but that's what it was. And like, I don't, again, it's just all lies. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean,
Rosa
those social
Kaganovich never
matters.
existed.
Just real quick, those social matters have nothing to do with what is historically left or right anyway. Like, you know, personally, I prefer if everyone just has the perspective of not caring and just accepts whatever. But it's not historically. You can't say you're not a communist or you are a communist just because you support or don't support these sorts of affairs.
Right. It's very, very, very silly.
But Stalin never had a Jewish wife. I don't know if I caught that last time. The idea that there was usury under the Soviet Union is laughable. I mean, there was not even any tolerance of market relations until the NEP. But the idea of usury, when the central bank was nationalized and owned by the state, it's impossible that there could be any usury. You want to know where there was usury? Under the Tsar. The Tsar's regime, first of all, was under the control of usurious powers abroad, but usury was a widespread practice, especially by kulaks after the Stolypin reforms, who would prey on peasants in times of famine and basically force them to take out usurious loans in order to steal and gobble up their land, which is also the tactic capitalists were employing even before the Stolypin reforms. So it's complete nonsense. The Tsarist famines, you had 1 million people die in the 1890s Volga famine. You had 1897, 300 to 500,000 people die. Okay, yeah. I can name more, but
brilliant.
Okay,
Yeah, 3 seconds more, so we'll give that to Truth. Truth. Conclude.
See, you see what he's doing here is
There's
the
so many
list of
lies.
and then you can never actually dig into any single claim. That's the only thing this like weird spazzy kid can do.
But also, like, with ridiculous claims like this, it's almost like you don't know where to start because it's sort of hard to disprove nonsense, right? Like, you have to give me something first.
Exactly. I'm already getting sick of this. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you guys think we should keep going, or do you guys want to do a space? What do you get? You guys tell me. One's if you want us to keep doing this. Two if you want us to start a space. I think they're craving more. All right, the twos are in the lead so far. Oh, ones are coming back though. All right, tell you what, guys, we'll do this for a little bit longer, but if it keeps getting like this repetitive, we're just gonna stop it and go right to the space. Sebastian does have a hard out in a half hour. I can go a little late tonight, but just wanted to let you guys be aware if we do the space, it'll probably be just me. So
yeah, I'm sort of getting out of here in like 15ish if we want to transition into opening the space when I do so.
That'll work. Yeah, we could probably do that. That's a good idea. I'm gonna also run to the bathroom real quick while I let this play.
Remarks on this topic. Go ahead. We'll do 90 seconds for concluding remarks. And then we'll move on to the second topic. So Truth, go ahead. 90. Obviously, you'll have the extra 3 seconds. So it'll be 93 seconds for you. Go ahead, Truth.
Thank you. So I always say, judge on actions. Who cares what anyone else says or thinks? And it's quite clear that Russia was an industrialized country, a top 4 economy with low tax rates, high GDP growing at 10%, 8 to 10% per year for 30 years before World War I. They weren't under any type of, they had their own in-house treasury. It was imposing at best very low interest loans that it wasn't subjecting anybody to like repossession of homes. There were no market crashes. For the most part, things were very stable, in fact. You know what there wasn't during the Tsar's reign? There were no mass famines. They weren't killing people by the millions. There was no Holodomor from 1932 to 33, where they killed over 10 million Ukrainians, Belarusians, and of course Kazakhs by starving them to death. That didn't happen. Why were there 70 famines during the USSR if they were so advanced and it was such a great ideology? Why did communism end up failing by 1991 if it was...
Okay, wait. Why were there so many famines? There was one, right? And it was before they were fully industrialized. Why did one communist state or bloc really crash? Why have so many capitalist ones crashed? Why have revolutions taken place in them? Right? Like, this logic doesn't hold. There are still communist countries right now leading the entire world, like communist China. Like,
supposed to be so successful? Why did they make so many bad decisions, like going into Afghanistan and engaging in a 10-year stalled war that led to just murder of death on both sides? A lot of bad decisions. They couldn't afford to finance their debt anymore. They actually left communism with $100 billion in debt. They were saddled with that because they were spending 50% of their revenue just on military. So this way they could go and invade other countries and spread their filthy demonic ideology so they could kill off their government.
Beyond just the issue of not being able to see particular versus universal, they act as though the individual failures of communist states are some sort of gotcha. If it's an actual failure, if you're not just lying, we will be the first ones to admit that it was a failure and learn from it. That's the whole point. It's not a gotcha to say you did this and that wrong, because we will probably say we know.
Right. Like people don't make mistakes. You know what I mean? It's very silly. The problem is, like, yes, the Soviet Union fell, and it was one of the worst humanitarian disasters in the entire history of the world.
Mm-hmm.
People starved and died all over the world because of this. So to act as if this is some kind of failure of communism, no, communism was what was beating these people. I mean, the notion that like this is some gotcha on communism is just silly. GDP growth of 8 to 10% a year.
Yeah, you claim it.
Yeah, I don't know what that's about.
The guy was claiming that Tsarist Russia was growing massively, but even if he wasn't lying about the GDP growth, that isn't inherently indicative of any sort of benefit or success to the people themselves. That's just these capitalists are growing their firms at big, like, high rates.
In power and install their own rogue regimes and steal the resources of the land, just as the Jewish banksters were sponsoring them to do. Thank you.
Perfect.
Jewish banksters were sponsoring them to steal everyone's land. You see how, like, there's no reason, no source, just random lie.
That's perfect timing. And Haz, for your concluding remarks on the first topic for 90 seconds, go ahead.
Right. They had such a high military budget because they were being besieged by the most powerful capitalist countries in the entire world. I mean, untold tens of billions of dollars were being, even more than that, were being spent in a concentrated effort by all the world's major capitalist powers, including the most powerful one, the United States, to destroy the Soviet Union and to destroy its ability to have any kind of international relations. So that's why they had to have.
All right, give me a second here. Dude, Jake, I let you back in and gave you a timeout so you could cool down and actually hold a conversation. Act like a grown-up, buddy.
Such a high military budget. They learned the lesson of the Nazi German invasion, and they couldn't allow it to ever happen again. They know that they were being encircled and that at any given moment they were going to be completely toppled and destroyed by foreign rapacious capitalist powers. So ask yourself the question, why did they need to defend themselves so aggressively? Why was their system such a threat to the powers that be and to the global system that prevailed? Nobody seems to be asking these questions. Nobody seems to be asking the open and obvious question of why are all of the countries today which are resisting the global system mostly aligned, at least having some connection to the communist tradition and communist history. There's a reason for these things. And the notion that under the Tsar that you didn't have usury, you didn't.
If the Soviet Union could have avoided this stuff as well, They probably would. They were trapped into this thing that was bleeding them dry. Look at the context in which they emerged from. Like, the U.S. had a foot up. They benefited in some sense economically from this war. Russia, I mean, the Soviet Union was devastated. And if you look at China today, they're staying out of these conflicts precisely because they know that if they focus on their own country and they stay out of these useless wars, they can develop their country a lot faster. The USSR could have done it as well, could have avoided this stuff and just focused on their people. They would have, and they could have.
Oh, 100%, brother. Like, the idea that they couldn't have is just, yeah. I'm just trying to like speed through this. So, like, this kid is like just bothering me with his I don't know how one person could be full of so much crazy
and have debt. It's a complete laughable lie. Everything he's claiming is completely pulled out of his ass. The idea 10 million people died in the so-called Holodomor, a lie invented by the CIA-backed organization of Ukrainian nationalists, is also laughable when estimates put the death toll much, much lower and due to natural causes. And after that famine, there was never another one again, except the one that was a consequence of the World War II. So we can get into, I'd love to get into the weeds of these so-called statistics that he's getting for that because, yeah, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and I put in if that's going to be the next topic. But guys, I appreciate Haz and Truth. That was the conclusion of the first topic. In the comment section, who do you think won the first?
That was the first topic.
Yeah.
All right. Keiko has a great idea that I was thinking of while we were listening to that. We're gonna just switch back and forth. We'll just bring the react to the space. So I kicked off the space. The issue, though, is that I can only share my screen with one tab, right? So I'm going to have to actually switch back and forth rather than, just like watch it in the space.
Does it still show the audio from the space, even if it's not the main tab? Because if so, you don't really need to show it on your screen. You just have to hear people speaking.
Very good point. It might. I don't know. Maybe we'll get the audience to test that with us, huh? We'll see. All right, everybody file into the space, and then share it, like it, all that good stuff. Yep. We'll get this going. I'm
gonna spread some links, and then I'll slowly start having to head out soon after that, probably.
Perfect. Sounds good, brother. I need to make you a co-host, but I guess like you don't really have to be.
Yeah, I'm just gonna make an announcement in the Discord.
Perfect. Are you going to share all the links? That's what you just said, huh? I'm stupid. All right, we're going to keep going. I'm going to put my mic on the space because it's not on yet. And all right, everybody in the space. What's up? We're live streaming this to YouTube right now. We are reacting to the debate that Haz Al-din, a friend of mine and the chairman of the American Communist Party, had with sort of a weird lie teller who calls himself truth teller last night. We've been explaining the lies, how they work, the tactic that he uses called the Gish Gallop, which is just rattling off a lot of crazy lies all at once on many different topics. He just does that over and over again. So we're going to be going back and forth between here and that. I want everybody, though, to see if they can. I'm going to try to share my screen for the space so other speakers can get heard on the stream. I want you guys to tell me if you can hear when I play the recording on my computer through the space, and that way we can keep listening.
Or I can also mute on the stream, and then you can let me know if the stream hears me.
That might work, too.
So just let me know when to test that as well.
Cool. Yeah, just give me 1 second here. Also, what was that kid's name? Kevin or whatever? Kevin, get in the space and request because I'm sick of your mouth, kid.
Oh, it's Jake? Yeah, Jake.
Jake? Was it Jake, not Kevin? Whatever.
All right, JQ.
Okay. Let's share screen again. This one. All right, there we go. And let's see if you guys can hear this.
Yeah, make me a speaker or something so I can test it.
All right, did you guys hear that?
I don't think so.
Yeah, Carlos is giving me a thumbs up.
Did they
All
hear it
right,
through
awesome.
No, on the stream. I don't know if they heard it.
Oh, on the stream? It's coming through on the. Oh, yeah, that might be difficult because it would go through on the space to the stream. Yeah, maybe not. Okay, well, it's not going to work. We're going to have to go back and forth.
Yeah, we'll test stuff out for the next show. We'll
It's
figure it out
fine.
behind the scenes.
I need a break from that anyway, and it's starting to get late. I would love to like sit here and go through the entire thing with you guys tonight, but I'm working another 12-hour day tomorrow,
Yeah,
so that's
you can
just
always
like
do a part 2 of that stream.
yeah, it's just unreasonable for me. Let's go to a different view. I hate this like view of Twitter. All right, there we go. The stream should be up and behind us, right? Maybe not. Hold on. We need this. No, it's not. See, this is where I screw everything up, guys. I'm sorry. There we go. We'll do this one. Oh, Sebastian's leaving.
Yeah, I just want to. I'm seeing. I just
If
want
you
you to
wanna-
test it without me on the screen.
Yeah, if
then
you
I'll
want to
head out.
make a new one with it behind us, that'd be fine. I just don't like how this looks. All right, everybody. If you have any questions, if you think you want to debate me, anything like that, go ahead and request and we'll bring you up. I'm going to make you co-host while you're still here, Sebastian.
I'll just head out whenever we get the first speaker.
That works. That works, brother. And I'm not going to go for like a super long time. Dude, I'm tired. You know what I mean? I think we demonstrated pretty well how crazy this guy was, and we'll continue doing that. Before we go, though, I do want to say I'm excited about May Day this year. Hopefully, Sebastian and I are going to be doing an in-person stream either this Thursday or Friday if we have time.
We could also do a
Jake,
vlog.
hold on one second, Sebastian. Jake, last chance, buddy. VC or ban? You tell me. Request to talk in the space, or you're out of here, kid. I can't deal with all the like nothing and lying and no reasons, etc. It's exhausting, son.
We have one request from Red Ray 49.
All right, bring him on up.
Yep. And then I'm gonna head out, guys. But good stream. Thanks for everyone joining, and I'll be on for next Noah show.
Thanks, brother. I'll see you in a couple days.
Night, yo.
All right, Ray, you can unmute yourself, man.
Hi, thank you very much, Noah. So this is not at all an accusatory question. I'm just asking just for context. So what was the intention of you guys getting into that debate? Because that, it's Myron Gaze and I forgot his name. He's British as well, the Muslim chap. I mean, their audience and demographics is the sort of people who usually buy into, I might be answering my own question, but who usually do buy into the sort of anti-Semitic sort of narrative. So what was the exact intentions of getting into the debate?
No, that's a really good and fair question. Look, the fact is that this narrative and what really amounts to a subculture, because it's sort of not actually political, it's pseudo-political, is sorry, let me start again. This is all being astroturfed. It's been astroturfed, but there comes a point when it begins really reeling people in, and it's a frightening amount of people, and it's based on lies. And so the intention is to shine truth on those lies. And obviously, like, expose them for who they really are, right? Actually investigate their claims, show and prove to people that they have no real basis in reality.
Yeah, fair enough. I was also gonna say, like, even before the communists started just voting Haz in, all things considered, basically on that demographic, he did pretty well on the initial results, even if he lost initially. For him to get like 43% compared to 53% or something like that on the initial thing before we started swarming in on the voting that he won, for that demographic, that isn't too bad.
No, I don't think so either. And you got to remember, like, the guy was like organizing a fake votes. So to actually have real votes go up against that and still maintain like a neck and neck sort of thing on their turf is pretty impressive, you know? I think really like it was very, very obvious that Oz won. I mean, the guy repeated himself over and over again. He had no reasons for anything, just, you know, crazy accusations.
I think what's the most craziest one is when, like, the almost the common one is Karl Marx himself was Jewish when, like, he might be ethnically Jewish for like partially through his dad's side, but he wasn't.
Right.
Like, it's just by like indirect association, you can just call anyone Jewish, and that's what a lot of what he was doing was like.
No kidding.
Someone who's Jewish because like someone's cousin-in-law is Jewish or some shit like that.
And it's so, and this is why like I say like the kid has to have either like is either a fraud, knows he's lying, or has to have some sort of severe mental disability. Because to go from, okay, Karl Marx is born, and let's say he's born Jewish, right? To go from there to looking at what he did and just saying actually everything he did, all of the philosophy he did, growing up in, I think his parents were Lutheran, they converted, a Lutheran house, etc. All of that means nothing because secretly, because he has this ethnicity, he's actually in on some conspiracy where it's kept secret, goes against what he actually says and does in real life, and is somehow what's controlling him. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing, like, you can't get from Karl Marx being born to Karl Marx being sort of like the secret Jewish plot guy in a straight line. You have to make something up at some point along that route.
So I didn't watch the whole thing because it was quite long. But did the whole idea of the fact that in the contemporary world most of communism is in the East or it's in Cuba, was that ever brought up, i.e. like contemporary communism? Even if you could make a case in the 20th century, contemporary communism has almost got nothing to do with Jews these days. Was that ever brought up?
I mean, in Asia, in South America, yeah, it was. And in fact, like, there's some of these people that literally call Xi Jinping Jewish. They call Kim Jong-un Jewish. They call Hugo Chavez Jewish. Everybody to them is Jewish. It's the dumbest thing ever. And they look for these like weird, spurious connections. And if they're not there, they make them up. It's wild. Like, I don't know, man. Yes, they did that. Haz made fun of it as well. I wanna go through the rest of this at some point. I just ain't got it in me tonight, you know.
Yeah, I'm sorry, what's your take on what's the guy? Harry Wayton or something like that? Who was that Jew who said yes, communism is Jewish or something like that? They brought him up. I mean, what's your take on that?
I mean, you can find even more Christians that say communism is Christian, right?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's just some random guy who isn't an authority in Judaism or in Jewish scholarship or Marxism, then just saying something and then it just being jumped on by anti-Semites to just prove whatever they want.
Right, absolutely. It's to me, we can say anyone from any religion can say communism is like this religion. But what communism is to communists who actually do this thing, right, is through Marxism-Leninism. It's society after capitalism, basically. And that's really what it is. If you want to look at it as part of your religion, cool. If you don't, cool. You know what I mean? Like, I don't, it just, like, it doesn't affect me much. That's all. We got a good question in the chat here. They call me Rex, says, will the ACP have a discussion with JT from Second Thought? I thought he was unfair to cast shade on ACP. Look, I'd love to. I've talked to the guy before and he seemed nice. I wanted to go over this, but the debate was a little more pressing and driving me crazy as I listened to it today. I think you're right. Now this is a guess, so bear with me. What I think happened, because I've spoken to him in the past and he seemed like a nice guy, didn't know a lot about Marxism yet, but was learning quickly and was really good at distilling a lot of deeper thoughts into easy to understand language. And that's something I respect. What I think happened is I think people that he trusts lied to him. It can happen. I mean, I'm a perfect example of, a guy that called me friend and brother for over a year ended up being an anti-communist, smiling to my face and telling me he was unlearning all of his anti-communism and liberalism and plotting behind my back to try to destroy everything I've dedicated my life to the entire time. So I think people underestimate how full of anti-communism the thing that called itself the left before we were here was. But that was a great question. Anyway, anyone else want to chime in? Because otherwise, I think I'm just gonna call it a night, man. I got a lot of work to do tomorrow. I got to be at work before the sun rises again. So if you want to speak, request and we'll bring you up real quick. I don't think it's surprising that the people trying to troll the chat were afraid to talk now that the talking part is here. They seem to run their mouths very well when they're able to hide behind a keyboard, but when they have to actually confront me, they all seem scared, right? Even the guy that Haz was debating, when he tried to confront me, he wanted to hide behind his gish gallops again, right? And when I tried to make him slow down and just go to one claim and explain how he's correct about it, he couldn't do it. He freaked out and went bananas all over our audience. And I respect you guys too much to let you go through that. All right, it doesn't look like, look, we got a lot of people in the space, but it doesn't really look like anyone has anything to say. So I'm going to call it a night, guys. We went through about like maybe almost half of this debate. I'm gonna convince Sebastian to here. I'm gonna end the space real quick. Sorry, everybody in the space. We'll see you next time. Keep tuning in on the stream for a few more minutes. But I'm gonna try to convince Sebastian to do this in person stream with me when we are together later this week. It should be good. Yeah, I think that's it. Everybody have a great couple days, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye, everybody.
Stand up, all victims of oppression, for the tyrants fear your might. Don't cling so hard to your possessions, for you have nothing if you have no right. Let racist ignorance be ended, for respect nonetheless enjoyed by one and all. So come, brothers and sisters, for the struggle carries on. The International unites the world in the song. So comrades, come rally, for this is the time and place. The international ideal unites the human race. Let no one build walls to divide us, walls of hatred nor walls of stone. Come greet the dawn and stand beside us. We'll live together or we'll die alone. In our world poisoned by exploitation, those who have taken, now they must give. And end the vanity of nations. We've but one earth on which to live. So come, brothers and sisters, for the struggle carries on. The International unites the world in the song. So comrades, come rally, for this is the time and place. The international ideal unites the human race. And so begins the final drama, in the streets and in the field. We stand unbowed before their armor, we defy their guns and shields. When we fight, provoked by their aggression, let us be inspired by life and love. For though they offer us concessions, change will not come from above. So come, brothers and sisters, for the struggle carries on. The International unites the world in a song. So comrades, come rally, for this is the time.